Hello and welcome to A to Zig. Today we're going to be talking about One Health and One Water, past, present, and future. And I have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Stephanie J.S. Baiyasi Kozicki, who of course is going to co-host with me on this program. And we're happy that you're going to be able to learn what we know about One Health and One Water. So Dr. Baiyasi, tell us about One Health.
Okay, well thank you, Dr. Kozicki. I have up here a definition of One Health, and you may or may not have heard of this term before. It's an approach that recognizes that the health of people is closely connected to the health of animals, as well as looking at the environment that we all share together. And we can see with the graphic, the Venn diagram of how environmental, animal, and human health blend together for One Health. It's not a new concept, but it's become more important in recent years. And we can talk about back in the 1820s, there was a link made between human and animal health. And in the 1920s, One Medicine was a term that was used. And it wasn't until 2007 that One Health was an approach that was used for pandemic preparedness. And in 2012, there was the first One Health Summit. And I wanted to bring to the public's attention that there are monthly ZOHU webinars, which stands for Zoonoses and One Health Updates, that is made available from the CDC that you can listen to each month. And they have a wide variety of topics that would be great for you to learn more about One Health. There is a joint plan of action that's been created from the One Health quadripartite involving the World Health Organization, the World Organization for Animal Health, the UN Environment Program, and Food and Agriculture Organization of the United States. And together they have 6 action tracks that are being looked at now. Again, this is a joint plan of action from 2022 to 2026. And so Action Track 1, we're looking at enhancing One Health capacities to strengthen health systems and reducing the risks from emerging and re-emerging zoonotic epidemics and pandemics, which is what I'm particularly interested in, and controlling and eliminating zoonoses, neglected tropical and vector-borne diseases, looking at strengthening the assessment, management, and communication of food safety risks, curbing the silent pandemic of antimicrobial resistance, which has been a problem, and we continue to look at that, looking at AMR, reducing that, and then integrating the environment into One Health. So moving on, as you may be aware, human populations are growing and expanding into new geographic areas, and so we can see from this photo a lot of migration happening, and in that migration, oftentimes we're having contact with animals and the environment that we're not used to being in contact with, and it provides opportunities for diseases to cross over maybe from the environment of animals into human populations and passing between animals and people. And when that happens, we call that a zoonotic disease. So those things are increasing because of all of the migration that's going on. And the Earth has experienced changes in climate and land use. We can see from this photo how the river is traversing through the environment, and to the far right you can see an area that looks maybe more natural with trees in that corner area. And then where man has come in and they've made plots of lands, cut down the trees, did different things with the agriculture, which may have led to silt, which you can see in the river. And these disruptions in the environment and the habitat of animals and the surroundings can provide opportunity for diseases to pass from animals to humans, or from back and forth and that kind of thing. The movement of people, animals, and products of animals has increased, as we know, because of international travel and trade. And this allows diseases to spread quickly, as you can see the image where it looks like they're bouncing around from nation to nation, because that's kind of what happened with COVID, right? And crossing borders and quickly spreading around the globe. The changes that we've seen have led to the spread of existing or known diseases or new or emerging diseases, zoonotic in nature, that are diseases that spread between animals and people. And there is a list there of various zoonotic diseases, which you may have heard before. Rabies, which is something that we want to vaccinate our dogs and cats from, and to keep away from raccoons and skunks and things like that, because they can carry rabies. Salmonella is a disease sometimes we get from chicken if it's not cooked properly, or handling your background fowl, which you don't want to be kissing those chickens. It's not a good thing. Keep those animals in their coop, and that prevents salmonella infection. Other diseases are listed there as well. You may have had ringworm, and that's transmitted sometimes from animals to people. What are common One Health issues? They're emerging, re-emerging, and endemic zoonotic diseases, tropical diseases, vector-borne diseases, which means coming from mosquitoes or ticks. There's been an increase in ticks in Michigan, and so there's an increase in tick-borne diseases. That's a One Health problem. Antimicrobial resistance, we've talked about already. Food safety and food security, which is close to my heart. And environmental contamination, climate change. Also, all of those things can lead to problems and create One Health issues. Even things that you might think is chronic, maybe mental health, non-communicable diseases, those can also benefit from a One Health approach, which involves this collaboration between human health, animal health, and the environment. All three working together to help solve a problem out there for health. Again, antimicrobial resistance. This is where various microbes can quickly spread through communities in the food supply. It makes it hard to treat infections in animals and people. So we've reduced the amount of antimicrobial use in food animals to help and allow more of those various drugs to be useful in the human realm. We found that would be best. So we've pretty much cut out, you may have thought that there's antimicrobial things in milk and meat. Not anymore. Things have changed with that, so we're reducing that considerably. Vector-borne diseases, again, mosquitoes carry dengue fever and other kinds, yellow fever, other kinds of diseases, malaria, etc. And ticks, all of those are vector-borne diseases, and with the rise of warmer temperatures and expanded mosquito and tick habitats, this creates problems for these vector-borne diseases, or VBDs. Food animal diseases, again, lovely chickens, but we don't want to be handling them without cleaning your hands afterwards, and keeping any of your boots that you may be walking into the coop with, keep those outside of the home, because we want to keep a distance between what's in the coop and what's in your house. And we want to keep people safe from food animal diseases. Human-animal bond is so important to have our animals close to us, talking about snuggling up to your dogs and cats. And it can help improve your well-being, but keep in mind that they do potentially carry diseases like tick-borne diseases, so you want to be sure that your animals are on preventive for tick-borne and flea things and other kinds of roundworm diseases. So make sure that your animals are seeing their veterinarians for their vaccines and preventative medications. Water, and water so important. The contamination of water that it may be used for people's drinking and recreation can make people and animals sick. So we need to consider environments and keeping water safe and clean. Various germs and chemicals can get into the water at the source, whether it be groundwater or water from lakes and rivers, or while the water is traveling through the various pipes, which are sometimes hundreds of years old and have what are called biofilms on the inside of them, and that can lead to potential diseases if those biofilms are disrupted. And after the water treatment plant has removed germs and chemicals from source water, it still has to run through those pipes. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at point-of-use filters for your home and thinking about that for your home and health of your family. Water helps to restore fluids lost through breathing, metabolism, sweating, and the removal of your body wastes. And water also in your body helps keep you from overheating. It lubricates your joints, lots of things. And water is a perfect zero-calorie beverage for quenching your thirst and rehydrating your body. Keep in mind this rule of threes. May or may not have heard this before, but you can survive 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 hours without shelter. We're talking like very cold environments and really bad environments, so 3 hours. 3 days without water and 3 weeks without food. So water is critically important to human survivability. We can only live 3 days without water. And here are various benefits of water that you can read over while I pass the clicker over to Dr. Kozicki, who's going to talk with us about One Water.
Thank you so much. As Stephanie had pointed out, there are health benefits to water, and we probably need to keep this in mind. But we also have to take a look at this idea of managing water much better than what we've been doing. And there is this assumption that we're doing a good job. And probably compared to a third world nation that doesn't have water treatment plants and hasn't invested trillions of dollars in infrastructure, we are. But our approach is really something that needs a more holistic understanding and shared responsibility. And there's various reasons for this. One is, as Stephanie had mentioned earlier, that the infrastructure is getting old, it needs to be replaced, even though people are reluctant to do so. If we don't, we're going to have water systems that are not going to really produce water that is potable. And there's another thing that people don't realize. Water is not sterile. I mean, you can get sterile water in a hospital, but the water you drink is not sterile. It's never been sterile. And so One Water is a way to look at sustainable development with terms of water. And this was really something that was started by a guy named Duncan Goose. And I'm not making that up. That's his name, Duncan Goose. He traveled around the world, and then he started a foundation because he saw how many people didn't have clean water. And he actually even created a documentary, and that got people's attention. In 2006, the United Nations decided that they were going to make this a sustainable development goal. You know, people realize there's enough water for everyone, but access to it is hampered by mismanagement, corruption, and just probably a disregard for how important it is. It is an asset. And sometimes I think people treat it as if it's something you just throw down the drain and never think about. We are in the midst of a water action decade that started in 2018. And it was started because people really understood that there was going to be a 40% shortfall in freshwater resources by 2030. A 40% shortfall in freshwater resources by 2030. That's pretty darn threatening to most of humanity. So there is a movie that you might want to catch that talks about the Great Lakes, because some people might be thinking, well, that's in Africa, South America, the desert. You know, it doesn't rely on anything I have to know, right? It does, because if you live in the Great Lakes region, there are going to be challenges here. So if you want to check out this documentary, Great Lakes, One Water for Life, you can find it on YouTube. I think you'll find it's going to give you a lot of information about what's happening in the Great Lakes Basin, where 20% of the known universe fresh water exists. So let me talk a little bit about One Health and how it connects to One Water. Partly because One Health is an approach that recognizes the health of people and how it's closely connected to animals and environment, it makes sense that water would be considered a part of this. Climate change is primarily a water crisis. And we feel the impacts of it in things like worsening floods, sea levels rising, shrinking ice fields, wildfires, droughts. All of those things are a result of climate change. But all of them really contain water as a critical element. 74%, get this, 74% of natural disasters between 2001 and 2018 were water related. And so water not only is a benefit, but it can also be turned into a disaster or a threat to human and animal life. So what are the impacts of climate change on human life and human health? Well, there are many. And this image here gives you some idea. But, you know, climate change is creating air pollution, extreme heat, drought, environmental degradation, wildfires and wildfire smoke, degraded living conditions and social inequities, changes in the vector ecology. You know, Stephanie was talking about that with the vector-borne diseases. Mosquitoes moving into the Great Lakes region are bringing things like West Nile virus here and yellow fever, stuff that was never anything we had to be concerned about. There's food system impacts, food shortages all over the world because of this. You know, a lot of the migration that's taking place right now in the world is because people are moving out of regions where they can't grow food and they can't sustain life. Severe weather and floods, we've seen them all over the United States, and some people say, well, that's just weather, it's going to change. No, it's a result of climate change, a result of the temperature in the atmosphere changing, getting hotter every year. And water quality itself is being impacted. And we're finding more and more concerns about the water quality in the United States because we're testing now for it. We've kind of turned a blind eye to it up until recently. So what are the water and global climate crises that we're facing? Well, rising temperatures, I already mentioned, rising sea levels. You know, the sea level is rising because the ice caps are melting, both north and south poles, and that ice is ending up going into the oceans, and the oceans are going up. And that means that in my lifetime and in your lifetime, we're going to see the oceans, you know, probably, you know, as many as 10 feet higher in some places than it is now. And that means that many coastal communities and many inland communities that have water migrating through it are going to have severe changes in their habitat and in the health situations. We have these extreme weather events now. You know, these huge raindrops that take place and other kinds of changes, tornadoes, hurricanes, monster hurricanes, hurricanes bigger than the size of Texas with 200-mile-an-hour winds, you know, slamming into coastal areas. This is all happening because of the climate crisis that we're in. And we're seeing other things like algal blooms. Lake Erie was almost dead because of this. And what happens when you have an increase in temperature is that algal blooms increase because this stuff starts to grow. And it can be toxic, and it can kill, and it can create all kinds of problems, including making the water that we want to drink poisonous. And this is happening around the world. And I mentioned that it did happen in Lake Erie. And Lake Erie is much better now. But, you know, that's a Great Lakes basin source that was at a point where it was almost becoming a dead waterway. So who's going to be affected by this more than anybody else? It's the next generation. The children right now who are watching this happen are going to have to deal with this. So you're probably saying, well, that doesn't bother me because I'm not a child. Think about your children. Think about your grandchildren. Think about the people who have to take care of you. Think about what it would be like in your old age and you're living in an environment where the climate is so bad that you may die from it. You know, those are the kinds of things that children are facing. Water and global climate crisis is a real thing. 450 million children today live in high and extremely high water vulnerability areas. That's happening right now. Every day, over 1,000 children under 5 die from diseases linked to inadequate water, sanitation, and hygiene. Climate change exacerbates water stress. By 2040, almost 1 in 4 children will live in an area of extremely high water stress. Contaminated water poses a huge threat to children's lives, and water and sanitation related diseases are one of the leading causes of death in children under the age of 5 right now. So you might think, well, I'm living someplace where that's not going to be a problem. It's a problem for all of us. The survival of the human population requires policy changes regarding water management. And I'm not just saying to scare you, that is the fact. You know, the human species, the human population could actually become extinct because it doesn't manage its water. And you might think, well, that's far-fetched. No, it isn't. It's a real possibility. We share responsibility for the quality of our lakes, rivers, and streams. drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater systems really need our attention. And we need to treat it as if it's an asset, again, not as if it's something we can just pass through the drain. Now, the one water supply options that we have include groundwater, conservation, recycled water, distilled water, as well as stormwater and surface water. And you can see on this chart how all of these can be used in different ways. For instance, for domestic use, there are many ways that we can tap these water sources. But there is a finite amount of water that exists. And obviously, if we pollute most of it, then we're going to have to recycle almost all of it for our use. Now, that's where the one water model comes in. It's a holistic use of water. This is an example of that. This is just an example of how one community could take the water it has and completely recycle it and reuse it in such a way that they don't waste any of it. And you might think, well, that's not possible. That's too expensive. That can't be done. It can. Here's what our common water treatment method is today. And you know, it's a system that really uses water and then kind of washes it back in to wherever it came from or some other place. And it's not a very carefully designed distribution system with the idea of recycling. There is something called new water, and this is something they're doing in Singapore. The public utilities there are recycling all of their water, and they have a holistic water strategy. And so they have a four-nation tap system. They have local catchments that gather the water that comes in by rain. They import some water because they don't have enough water in their catchments. They have new water, which is basically recycled water, and that includes sewered water. And then they have desalinated water, which is very expensive, for instance, to manage. And there are some corrosion and other issues with that. So even though most of the water is out in the oceans, and the planet is, really a blue planet with lots of water, most of that is salt water, which we really can't use very effectively. So the new water treatment approach that they're using in Singapore is this one that you're seeing up on the screen right now. It's a series of recovery methods that eventually takes the water and puts it right back into use. It's a closed loop. The water gets reused over and over again. And there are some communities that are working on this. So water utilities today need to access their risks and look at them and really assess what is necessary to build resilience for future drought, floods, and stormwater challenges. And this is something that every community has to really take a look at. Some communities are already doing this. And you might say, well, don't we have a standard in this country? Yeah, the United States has a Safe Drinking Water Act, which sets a standard, and a Clean Water Act, which sets a standard. But I want to point out that these do not take care of everything. The Safe Water Act was passed in 1974 and amended in 1986 and 1996. And if you think about it, that was right on the beginning of our awareness of climate change. And it did set some national standards for drinking water based on science and current engineering standards. But here we are in 2023. We have to think about it differently. Now, what the Clean Water Act says is that we're all entitled to clean water, and that people who are polluting and so forth have to regard us humans and animals as being entitled to the right to have clean water. And so clean water is a right that we all have access to in the United States because of this regulation. Now, New York City is already looking at accelerating its efforts to mitigate climate risks and wastewater treatment. They've got a bold plan to manage over 1 billion gallons of water, potable water, and this is because they understand that down the road they're going to need to do something different if they're going to have water for the largest city in the United States. In addition, Los Angeles, another large city on the other side of the country, has a plan, One Water 2040, which is a holistic and collaborative effort to consider the city's water resources. And they're looking at this recycled water as one way to basically take care of some of their needs. And so they're investing in One Water. So this is their plan, and you can look it up if you want, but there really is an actual plan to do this, and they're investing in it. So we need some real-time feedback about our water quality. We don't have a water quality index in the United States. We don't have a water quantity index in the United States. We probably should have one so that on any given day we would know what the water quality in our communities are, the water quality we drink, and how much of it we need. That's something that has to be initiated as legislation. That's another matter altogether. But the feedback we humans need to survive is water quality information. And we need to create this water quality and quantity index sometime soon if we're really going to take advantage of the resources that we have. Now, I do want to point out that if you want more information, particularly about the Great Lakes region, the movie Great Lakes One Water for Life would be worth your time. You can find it on YouTube. This is a movie that really gets into all of these kinds of issues and talks about what to do with 20% of the universe's fresh water, actually all the water that most of us in the Great Lakes region rely on. So anyways, I'm hoping that you'll find that this information we shared with you is helpful. Stephanie and I would love your questions. You can send them to us at zigpsych@sbcglobal.net, and we'll be happy to follow up with you and provide whatever other information you need. Stephanie, is there anything you want to add in closing?
Well, I wanted to share my sweatshirt here at Michigan State University, where I graduated from vet school. Go green.
Go white.
And keep in mind, One Health means the health of all of you. So look out for that, promote it, and let's stay safe.
Thank you very much for tuning in to A to Zig. And next time you take a drink of water, keep in mind that we're all responsible to manage it. Have a good one.